Many states in the South have a long-standing relationship with federal courts when it comes to integrating our public schools. Mississippi is no exception. In 1954, the U.S. Supreme Court issued a ruling in the landmark Brown versus Board of Education case, which outlawed segregation in this country. It would be many years before Mississippi schools complied. Some did with so few problems, others continued to resist, sparking lawsuits that exist even today. Here to discuss the current state of school integration in our state, Mississippi NAACP President Derrick Johnson. Rex Buffington is the director of Stennis Center for Public Service, and Dr. Burchfield is superintendent of Clinton Public School District. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
You know, a lot is going on about discussing education these days, and of course that has been topic number one in the legislature and so forth. And this is a topic that I think is incredibly important because even though it's a big part of our past, it's also a big part of our present and will be a big part of our future. And Derrick, I think you're an excellent person to start this discussion off because I feel like that I've heard you speak so eloquently about this topic, and I was trying to think, where do we start with this? Do we start with, say, Plessy versus Ferguson, the 1896 case that, of course, allowed separate but equal, or do we go 1954, or do we go to 1970? Where do we start?
Well, the context is we should always talk about what is the role of government, what's the role of state government in ensuring that we have a well-educated populace. State of Mississippi did not establish a public education system until 1868. We were an agricultural-based economy, so individuals didn't see the value of educating its citizens. Because of the racial tension following the Civil War, in 1890 Constitution, we began to see the codification of segregation in public education. You fast forward to 1954 as a result of Charles Hamilton Houston and Thurgood Marshall's asserting that citizens who of African descent, African Americans at that time considered Negroes, should be entitled to public education equal to all other tax-paying citizens. African Americans in this state at that time was the majority populations, paid taxes, provided much of the labor, and many felt they should be entitled to the services of government just like all other citizens. Unfortunately, the state of Mississippi was undereducating or not educating working class whites at the same time because many seeing public policy was one to drive business, to ensure that individuals who own land should generate more profit. It did not want individuals to be educated to assert for a quality wage, black or white.
Right.
After 1954, we seen mass resistance, and it was led by the government, the establishment of the Sovereignty Commission, which is a state spy agency, to prevent any effort to integrate schools. Well, why would you want to integrate schools? Well, the real issue is that if children sat next to each other and the dollars were spent equally, all will be entitled for an opportunity to provide a quality of life, but also support the government. What we have seen since 1954 with mass resistance was local communities refusing to provide quality education for all of its citizens, all of its tax-paying citizens, with the exceptions of a few communities. Tupelo is a good example. They decided to integrate and do so, and they did so effectively. For a short period of time, Yazoo City did the same thing, right? Things have changed. Now we are in the midst of a new reality. Right. Where people feel that everyone should not be provided with a quality education, that one's tax dollars should not be utilized for all of the citizens, and we're seeing a reversal of segregation efforts. Much of the mass resistance was led with the establishment of private academies. Anywhere African Americans made up 25 to 30% of the school-age population, you will find a segregated private academy, all of which were established after 1954. And unfortunately, with the new era of privatizations, we're going to see a resegregation of tax dollars in a way that we have not seen in many years.
Talk about this current trend toward resegregating. What is causing that? I mean, you see that. What do you think's driving it?
Well, you know, race has been an effective tool to control tax dollars. Much of this state's policy is based on race, region, or religion. If you put the right racial argument in front of a question, you can get people to vote against their interests. The concept that a child from one community should be provided the equal access to quality education to another child from another community, I mean, those childs will now compete for jobs. Those children will now compete for entrepreneurship and many other things. And the power dynamics in this state still is one in which a certain class of individuals feel they should control all modes of productions, government, and resources.
You've touched on some of the ramifications. What do you think long term, what do you think that causes if this doesn't change?
Well, the level of racial strife, the level of class strife will only increase. Race is only the canary in the mine. What we're looking at is class warfare like we have not seen in many, many years. And that's unfortunate for this democracy, for this state, because we're going to revisit ugly periods in our past. And it all can be avoided. Good people being silent allow for bad things to happen. And I hope Mississippians, black and white, will stand up and say, we want to be a Mississippi of anew, not the Mississippi of old.
What suggestions would you give for the legislature, say, to help cause this not to happen?
Well, we can no longer be the state that's the lowest funded education system in the country. We have to increase the value of teachers. In Mississippi, an education degree is no longer a marketable degree. For many individuals who go work in the most areas of most desperate need, they're so underpaid. And in many cases, you can give them a $5,000 raise and they'll still be the lowest paid teachers in the country. We have to set a new priority. If we want Mississippi to grow, prosper, and be competitive in a global economy, we have to invest in our citizens, and we cannot isolate one community over the other.
You mentioned Yazoo City. Talk a little bit about what happened there.
Well, you know, that's an example of when you have a major company playing a critical role to ensure quality education for everyone, and you go through a process of integrating the schools, you've seen a scenario where there was a true effort to integrate. It did not necessarily end that way, because what we've seen over time in Yazoo City, white parents slowly began to take their kids out of the public education system and send them to the segregated private academy. Like most counties in this state, some of the public support and business community support began to gravitate towards that private academy, in many cases illegally, particularly for the public support. The state of Mississippi, we have to learn from our past and not repeat our past. And unfortunately, I'm seeing a scenario where we may be repeating our past.
Rex, you were right in the middle of a successful case where schools were combined together into one school over in Starkville. Tell a little bit about that story.
Well, in our situation, I guess, you know, one thing that we know for sure is that separate is not equal, and I think we knew that back when schools were first integrated. There was a great effort to make that case, but it was never true, and it's certainly not true now. There's a lot of separation now, and it's never equal. Right. I think one thing that we as a community learned through our process, meaning to jump ahead, but we learned that we are really better together. Yeah. In our situation in Starkville, when the schools integrated, there were two districts. There was a county district and a city district. The city district, a lot of parents committed to staying and working hard and really believing in public education and making the schools strong, and the school district did thrive. I mean, it was a good integrated district that really did thrive and really proved how much better things could be together. But even while that was happening, there was the county district right there, you know, neighbors just a few miles away, that actually became almost completely African American. Almost it was 98%, I think, and that situation was bad because all the resources really were with the city district. And the county school district, I mean, they were working hard. They were doing the best they could with what they had, but they didn't have enough to make a success. I mean, not only was it they didn't have resources that would have made it possible for them to succeed, you know, no matter where they'd been, but even the demographic, the geography of where they were. It was just an impossible situation, really, for them. So we lived that way, though, for many years. I mean, really for a long time. We had this thriving school district in the city, and we had a failing school district in the county. You know, we had a situation where that school district went into conservatorship twice.
That's when the state took it over.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you know, it was clearly an awful situation, and it was really an immoral situation. When you think about it, you know, with our values, I mean, it was certainly not within keeping with what we all would say our values are, because these children out in the county were going to school. We were forcing them to go to school. Our state laws say you've got to go to school. Well, I think we as a state, if we say you've got to go to school, we have a responsibility to make sure that we're giving those students what they deserve. And we were not. It was certainly an unequal situation. So for many years it was obvious that the only real solution was to bring those two school districts together. But even though it was obvious, there was obviously also a lot of opposition to it. You know, people in the Starkville district were proud of what they had built. They were proud of the quality of their school district. And while, you know, they cared about those students in the county in a lot of ways, they really did, they didn't really want to combine the school districts because they were afraid that what they had built would somehow be taken away.
And there was even concern in the county about something about the mean city kids, and then in the city about the mean county kids. And
well, neither side really wanted to get together, and yet I think both sides knew that they should. But what
was the final push that pushed everything together?
Well, the final push actually was that the legislature mandated that we had to consolidate.
So isn't that amazing? I mean, here Brown versus Board of Education had no real vehicle to push segregation, but it came down to money, didn't it?
It did. It came down to money, and it came down to the law, and we were told in Starkville, you know, by the legislature, you will consolidate these two districts. Yeah. And so, I mean, we were given that, and that, you know, gave everybody an opportunity to say, okay, how are we going to handle this? You know, what are we going to do? And I think what really worked in our school district was that people pulled together and decided we are going to consolidate and we're going to do it right.
And you've had some real successes since then.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think one of the keys to the success was that we did have a commission, a local commission, that was actually led by the State Department of Education, but it was local people on the commission who were given the opportunity to come together and determine how we were going to consolidate. In other words, we said we're not going to just throw these schools together. We're going to design a district where every student is going to have a better opportunity for education. And I mean, we had a big campaign in the community. People signed pledges. You know, better together was really kind of our focus there. That we knew we could be better and stronger together. Not only would it be better for those students who were in the county schools, who didn't have art, didn't have music, didn't have so many things that the city schools had. Obviously, you could see why that was going to be better, but we were determined to show that it was also going to be better for the students who were in the current Starkville district. And so we worked hard, pulled together all of our resources, and came up with a plan that really does make it better.
I mean, not only did you get the students from East and West Oktibbeha County schools, but you also got several students from academies that came back to Starkville School.
Well, we did. I think one of the big fears that people in the Starkville schools had always lived with, that one of the big obstacles to consolidating was that there was a fear that there would be white flight, you know, as soon as we consolidated. And that was something that you heard continually, you know, that a lot of people would leave if we consolidated. And so, you know, we really all worried about that, but we determined that if we made our school so good that people would want to come, they couldn't refuse to come. I mean, we forced to come to public schools. They should do that because they choose it because it's the best. And that's what we did.
And you've had academic and athletic success since.
Oh, absolutely. The very first year of consolidation, we had a state championship in football.
Well, speaking of that,
that's a big deal.
Yeah, speaking of that man on right next to you knows a little bit about a state football championship. Well, congratulations, Dr. Burchfield. Of course, Clinton won the state championship this year. And your school system, I think, is very successful, obviously, academically and athletically, has been for many, many years, a long tradition of academic success. Also, you have about a 50-50 racial mix, too, as well. But you do something a little bit different in your system. I want you to brag and tell us a little bit about it.
When you look at Clinton, we're a relatively young district. It was formed in 1970. It pulled away from Hinds County. And the demographics have changed tremendously in the 46 years that we have been in existence. Probably 72% white, the rest African American when we started. Now we are a majority minority district. About 52% of our kids are African American. We've got a good number of Asian kids and a good number of Hispanic kids, and the rest of us are white. The thing that hasn't changed in Clinton is two things that have been, I feel like, that has made a difference in our community. First of all, Clinton is defined by its public schools. The support during these 46 years has not wavered. We, in 2011, and in probably the most trying economic environment that we as an adults have seen, we passed a bond issue of about 87%.
Which is very difficult to do in Mississippi because you have to have over 60%.
So true. Yeah. And we were proud of that. And of course, people in some cases were questioning that. How are you going to do that? And so the answer was that we couldn't afford not to do it.
Right.
And we did it, and we came out in 2 years and 3 years, and the economy began to pick up, and we had 2 brand new schools that we had to show for it. Mm-hmm. The other thing that is noted about Clinton is the expectations that they have for us. We have some pretty high standards out there, and we work every day to meet those standards, and the conversation in Clinton has never been one about black and white. It's been about kids, what is best for kids. And so we've got data that says that when kids come to us at kindergarten or first grade, first year with a reading gate, third grade reading gate, 100% of our kids pass that thing. And the research says if these kids are on grade level at the third grade, their chances of being successful through high school is really, really good. So we've got a lot of good teachers out there. We still have the blessings of Mississippi College, and we have the pick of the litter in most cases from them. And it's just been a good experience for us.
One of the things that you do differently in your district is that you don't necessarily have neighborhood schools. All the kids from your district go to one school, like K through 2, and then 2 through. And so that way the kids, by the time they get to high school, they've known each other for years, and that has to help with relationships.
That's correct. We start out kindergarten, Clinton Park Elementary. Mm-hmm. We don't have the haves and have-nots. There's not a division of resources between elementary schools. They go K1, then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and all the way up to Clinton High School. Start off and end, all kids go to the same buildings, which is sort of unique in Mississippi. Now, as our school district grows, and it is growing, we may have to look at some other organizational building plans, but right now it works for us.
Was that done intentionally, or was that done just because you were growing so fast and you needed new schools? So, because it really does seem like a great idea.
Yeah, Dr. Ballou, our first superintendent, started that process. In 1981, by court order, we were forced to take on part of Hinds County, what was known as Lovett Elementary and Sumner Hill High School, majority black high schools, elementary schools in Clinton. And so now those schools, Lovett Elementary is a 6th grade school, which all our kids go through Lovett. Sumner Hill is our 9th grade school. All our kids go through Sumner Hill. Both of those buildings have been serviced. They look really, really nice. Sumner Hill, 3 years ago, I believe, was the highest performing school in the state of Mississippi. Lovett Elementary just received a Blue Ribbon School Award by the Department of Education nationally. So they're just buildings now. But the history is so rich in Clinton, where both blacks and whites have worked together to make this happen.
What are some of the challenges you face in the upcoming future?
I think the biggest challenge that we have as growth comes to Clinton, we have the Continental Tire Company that's scheduled to come on board 2019, I believe. There's not enough funds to keep up with growth. We have kids in trailers, which to me are portable classrooms, I guess we could call them, is not very desirable, but that's what we are doing right now just to get to a point where the next bond issue will generate enough funds to house some of these kids.
Kind of a roundtable now, I guess, at this point, and talking about the future, and maybe giving some advice to some of the districts right now that are struggling. And one of the golden threads I noticed through both of your communities, A, you've got a college there. B, you've got incredibly strong community support, which I think is important, and I think you probably have parents that are a very big part of it as well. Recently, there was a case in Cleveland, Mississippi, that was brought down by Judge Deborah Brown about to desegregate the Cleveland schools, and give a little bit of advice to them, I guess, because they're going to be struggling and they're going to be going through some similar issues that went on in Starkville, although there seems to be a little bit different story there.
Well, they have a great university there too that
Right.
I hope will be a part of that solution. And I think every community has to really look at what their resources are and pull those in to the process. You know, I do think in our case we had Mississippi State University, and Mississippi State ended up being a big part of our solution because we're actually building a new school on the campus of Mississippi State as part of our plan. But what I'm mindful of is that every community has assets. They may not be the same,
Right.
but I think you have to find what it is that can help you to be successful. You have to bring those people into the processes. Maybe it's community college that's close by that can be a part of the solution too. There are a lot of things that you can do.
You know, the irony of it was that your schools the schools were brought together because of financial reasons, and yet now you're having to build a very expensive school.
Exactly. I think that's one thing that we would say to the legislature is that consolidations of schools is not really a cost saver, at least initially, because you're going to have to provide the resources to make it great. You know, you can't just throw them together and let things sort of fall to whatever level they will. You have to really be intentional about making it great, and that takes money.
I was reading an article talking about the benefits of having integrated schools and talking about, and it only makes sense if you think about it, kids are not growing up in a bubble. They actually get to know their peers and everything. Wouldn't you say that that's something that both of you have seen in your districts?
I think we have in ours, we have a saying in Clinton, things that matter you can't leave to chance. And I think that in Cleveland, my suggestion to them, this whole process, they have a blank slate to form a district that group of people can make look like it wants to, obviously approved by the federal government. Right. But I think a level of transparency by all groups. I think that, and have everybody at the table. I think where we get in trouble, or where I get in trouble, is we make decisions on people or things that are not sitting at the table. And when you have a strategic plan, you have everybody at the table, you can really look at the things that matter. And then if I know what those things are, then I am responsible, or our administrative team is responsible for pulling the things together to meet those goals.
Yeah.
It's a scenario, and when I look at Clinton and their decision to appeal the judge's decision, what a waste of resources. Right? So I hear the superintendent of Clinton, I hear the scenario in Starkville. Their financial issue is, how do we make our facilities better? How do we grow? How do we keep up with the pace and make sure we strive for excellence? And it's such a negative mindset in Cleveland to say, how do we continue to resist?
Right.
How do we exclude? How do we maintain a culture that's not healthy for any community? And that's an unfortunate. So, if they will listen to any advice, let it go.
Right.
Be the Christians that many of them may proclaim to be, and allow people to be people, and let's train our young people in the way they should go.
Yeah, I think that was one of the fascinating things. There was so much concern in Starkville, for instance, before this happened. And then everybody went through it, and it turned out to be a blessing.
Well, there's so much strength in diversity, and yet we have to be intentional about seeking diversity. It's not natural. I mean, we all gravitate to the people who are just like us.
Right.
And we also tend to, as humans, gravitate to the way things are rather than, taking the risk and taking the step to achieve what's out there that we don't know as well. But I think it's a lot like physical exercise. It's not a natural thing, and some of us resist it more than others, but it does us a lot of good when we do it. When we intentionally make the decision that we're going to go out there and we're going to seek it and be stronger and better. Diversity's that way too. I mean, it really makes us stronger, but we have to fight for it.
I really appreciate y'all coming in and sharing your views on this, and hopefully helping us take another step toward a better future. Thank you.